Hey guys, welcome back to Choosing Recovery. I'm Olivia.
I'm Scotty.
And today we have an incredible story from Amy, so let's jump right into it.
Okay. Alright, so what was your drug or drugs of choice if you had multiple?
My drug of choice was opiates, mostly heroin. Of course, it got to the degree that, it might have started, that I would try to constantly get my hands on that. Eventually, it went to, if I couldn't get the heroin, I was doing anything and everything. I was doing meth, I was doing crack, I was doing weed, Adderall, the Xanax, just cocaine, whatever I could be doing.
At what age did you start to use any substance?
So, the first time I started using anything would be like weed and alcohol, and that was in like my senior year of high school. I dabbled with all of that, and slowly that kind of turned into maybe one day somebody had an Adderall and I wanted to try it. I tried the Molly, I tried acid. I really started to have this like curiosity for all of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until my early 20s that the heroin really came into the picture. At that point, I had surgeries, several surgeries that kind of were back to back, and I just tried these pills pretty consistently, and then all of a sudden, I didn't have them anymore, and I realized I had a pretty big problem. I had to go to work the next day. I couldn't even function without the pills, so I moved to Roxy, and obviously I was buying those off the streets. That all started in my early 20s. We graduated to heroin pretty quickly from there.
Amy, how long have you used for?
So I used roughly about, I would say, like 8 years. About that. If you were to, start back from the weed and all that, about 8 years.
Okay. And who did your addiction affect?
Okay, so of course it affected everybody in my life. Everyone knew my potential, they knew what I was doing, and I know that I was breaking a lot of hearts by doing it. But the heart I broke the most is definitely my daddy's. And he is, sorry.
You're okay.
My dad is my heart and soul, and always will be. And so, my dad, he's in stage 4 kidney failure. He had hepatitis C.
Wow.
He's been cured since, but
that's good.
it had, he's had it for so long, like it had already done damage to his body.
Wow.
So my dad, when he was 16, 17, 18 years old, he made choices with drugs that ended up coming back and, affecting him decades down the road.
Wow.
I can only fathom how difficult that was for him, and then all of a sudden, maybe not all of a sudden, and then he had a daughter that was an addict. That hurts my heart, but at the same time, both him and I have spoken about it, and we're almost thankful that we were able to connect in that way, because, he understood I didn't want to be like that. He understood that I was sick. But I was hurting him a lot, and now I don't have to do that anymore, and that I do this for me, but to make my dad proud is by far my biggest success,
That's awesome.
That's incredible. I'm glad you said your dad's doing well today.
He's doing so well.
Good.
He actually sent me a letter, because when I was going through all this, he was very sick, and he sent me a picture of a letter he found the other day in the garage, and he had written it when he was dying.
Oh, wow.
And he never gave it to me, but it's this beautiful letter, and he's talking about how he feels like I'm angry that he's dying, and
wow.
that he's so sorry he has to go. But at the end, my dad said, I know that you have the power in you to make a difference in people's lives. I just hope that it's a positive one. And that was the last words my dad wrote to me in a letter that he thought was going to be, he was going to be gone,
Wow.
That, for me to be able to get that letter, though, now, when I am in a place where I'm making positive differences in people's lives, is by far
It's powerful.
so amazing. But my dad knew I had the potential in me to destroy shit,
Yeah. It's powerful.
He knew long ago, and I'm sure he
Wow, that's amazing.
And it's awesome that you have that kind of support. It is.
I have the best support system. I'm very blessed.
And that's important for anybody out there listening. It's important. Build a network, build a support system. You know, it's important. So
my network now is still very similar to my network then, because you know, the people that I really trusted and I really cared about, and I don't know, you know, people that really loved me, they weren't using, because that's not how this goes. You
Right.
know what I mean? So all of my best friends now are still the same ones that watched me struggle then.
Yep.
You know, you've got to set yourself up for success, and if you're surrounding yourself with people that don't want to see you thrive, you're never gonna get there. You know.
100%.
Yep. Absolutely.
100%.
Awesome.
I like that. So Amy, what led you to get clean in the first place?
So there was a lot of factors that, you know, played a part. It took a couple of years for me to slowly start admitting that I needed help, and that you know, maybe I was worse than I thought. You know, that whole process for me took a long time. I know that everything kind of changed for me. Essentially, I finally got tired of being sick and tired, and one night I went home to my dad, and I crawled into his recliner. He had this recliner that he's had since I can remember. I'm 28 years old, and I was still crawl into that recliner to this day. But I crawled into his recliner, and I remember just almost just screaming, like just letting every ounce of misery and pain and deception and all the lies and all of that was just like finally coming to the surface, and I was ready to let it all out. And I was in my dad's lap, and I was just letting it all out finally, and my dad was crying with me. And I remember that night he told me, he said, Amy, I cannot die knowing you're sick. And you know, he probably told me something like that 1,000 times, but for some reason that night, at that moment, that is when his words just resonated with me, and everything changed from that moment. I admitted to everything. I admitted to the relapse and all of these, you know, all of these things I've been going through. And my dad got me into detox 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Incredible.
He literally called like hospital after hospital. You know, I had already made the choice at that point that I was gonna go, and so I was already in withdrawal. And I remember just being so sick, you know, and my dad just sitting there calling over and over while I'm throwing up on the couch, you know, and I just had to watch him do it, because I had to say to myself, this is why, you know, this is why you're gonna do this. This is why you're gonna get clean, because I can't, you know, like I had every opportunity given to me to go after recovery, and I finally wanted to do that. So my dad got me into a detox program. We skipped the hospital. Like I had a bed at 8 p.m. on a Sunday.
Wow.
It's hard.
That's incredible. Yeah.
He really, you know, my dad is my hero, and that's just one of many examples. But he got me in, and I went to detox. You know, I got clean from the heroin. I got back on my mental health medication. That's been a struggle of mine as well. You know,
Good
with
for
drugs, I would always tell myself I didn't need the medication, and I'd be on and off. And I'm bipolar, so that was just like a mess in itself.
I get
so
it.
I had a lot going on, and I went to detox to get my life right. Well, I thought, you know, I did get clean, but I met a man who I will now call a boy. But and you know, long story short, I thought that I finally made good decisions in my life. You know, oh wow, like I'm clean for 5 days. Like God must have put everything that He wanted me to have in front of me. So I met a guy, and we got married 11 days after meeting each other. We were in the detox program together for 8 days. 3 days later, we got married. You know, in hindsight, biggest mistake. It's not a mistake. It's actually been, you know, part of my path. But we all know how that turned out. I don't have to tell you all that I'm trying to get a divorce right now. But, you know, we did stay happy. It was like happily ever after, almost too good to be true for like a month. But that's what narcissists
Mm.
And it was pretty quickly that the true person he was came out. You know, there was trauma, there was abuse, mental, physical, emotional.
Wow.
He was just a horrible person. And, you know, you would think I wouldn't be so shocked by that. But for me, I didn't understand how I could, you know, all of a sudden, like, you know, marriage was serious to me. I know that sounds silly because I married him after 11. But when I married him, I genuinely thought that this was the love of my life and this was meant to be. So when he started cheating and the abuse and all these horrible things that I never experienced in relationships before, all of a sudden I was experiencing them in my marriage. And I didn't,
Wow.
I was like, how, you know, how is this possible? Well, I was married him, I knew him. But, you know, so we relapsed together pretty quickly after that. And everything pretty spiraled out of control. We had a little backyard wedding ceremony. And the night before that happened, it was actually my first overdose. You know, I thought for so long because I didn't use a needle that I was above that, and that wouldn't happen to me. And until the very moment that my brother was shaking me and above me and saying, "Where's the heroin? Where's the heroin?" I thought I was above it. And then all of a sudden, I put a straw up my nose, and next thing I know, I'm blue. My brother had to do life-saving, like, something to my chest that caused like a big bruise, like crawling back, just traumatic. And I remember that was a big turning point for me because I realized, like, I'm not above this disease, you know, I'm not at all. And I didn't want to die. But, you know, that day, my husband told me that he lost all respect for my brother because my brother hurt me. That, too, put a lot of perspective on things because I guess I started seeing things clearly instead of, like, with love and blindness and, you know, passion. And I was like, no, this man has been here for me my entire life. This man has saved me from the drugs that he handed me, you know? And that's not his fault by any means. I'm not saying that, like, because I chose to put them into my body, of course. But this man has done nothing but try to do good by me my whole life. I might not have this life anymore if he didn't save it. So how you lost respect? That's the thing. He left pretty soon after that, and that's when I really decided to go get the help. I checked myself into rehab, and unfortunately, like, it didn't matter what my parents said, my family, my friends, my loved ones, it didn't matter. I didn't want the help until I wanted it, and it took a man breaking me to that degree for me to finally say, like, I want to die, but I don't want to die, so I need to fix this.
Yeah. Well, how are you staying clean today, Amy?
So I would say one of my biggest ways that I did that is by moving. And I know that not everybody watching might have that opportunity, but there is a reason that they talk about people, places, things.
Yep.
And, you know, when I got out of rehab, I so quickly saw myself going back to that same life. I hadn't relapsed, but I had already contacted my husband, and we had already been talking about getting back together. He was on drugs, so I already knew that. I guess I thought I could change him, you know. But I saw these patterns that I've been through before. I watched them happen, and I knew I couldn't go back. So I moved to California. My brother lives out here in San Francisco, and it's been the biggest blessing.
Awesome.
I've left all the toxicity. You know, I created a life for myself that was very dangerous there, and it had nothing to do with the place. It's what I did in that place. You know, it's the memories I created. It's the people I've hurt. It's the lies, the manipulation, and the dope house every corner. You know, I can't go back there. I haven't been back home since I've moved. Still a little nervous about that aspect. I think I'll be okay, but I think that's a big part. And also, is I did the work this time that is required, in my opinion, for recovery work. You know, I had previously been trying to think that, you know, medicines like Suboxone or methadone were like some quick fix, and then all of my problems would be solved. But we know as addicts, it's not how this works, that there's so much more going on inside that we have to face, that we have to heal, that we have to confront, you know, and accept. And that's a hard process, but either way, you know, I think I finally took the time, which in rehab, 8 months of inpatient rehab, that's a lot of time, to heal those parts of me that were causing me to go back to using. I relapsed just by walking into Walmart and seeing somebody I used to use with, you know?
Yep.
It's just, we need to set ourselves up for success, and I knew where my failures were at this point, you know?
Absolutely. So, what is your biggest accomplishment in your recovery so far?
You know, so one of the most beautiful things that's come out of this, and I would definitely say my biggest accomplishment, is me finding my voice, you know, and using my voice. It can be very difficult sometimes to go online and label myself so harshly as a recovering addict, you know. It opens you up to an entire world of hate and judgment, and, you know, you have the Karens out there, and it can get a little rough, but at the same time, for, you know, the one person that wants to call me a junkie on my TikTok or this or that, there is 300 of them that are listening, 3,000 that are listening to my story and are resonating with it.
Absolutely.
And are inspired by it, you know? I had someone tell me the other day, I posted a video on TikTok about overdose. It was a pretty harsh video, but it said, you know, that high you're chasing might be your last one. And somebody messaged me and told me that video made them put their needle down.
Wow.
And that is just, that's
worth it.
That
empowering.
I've been able to take my story, and, you know, it's been scary to do so, but I've spun it, I've taken my pain and turned it into power. You know?
Wow.
And,
Love that.
And I've just used my struggles to try to inspire other people. And, you know, there was a time when I was the girl watching the videos, hoping that life could be for me, and now I'm the one making the videos.
If you could say something to someone who is still actively using, what would you say to them?
I don't think I'll ever forget, no matter how far I come in my recovery, the feeling of where you're at now is so fresh to me. You know, that hopelessness, feeling like you dug a hole too far to get out of, you know, feeling like there's no turning back, you know, you've already made too many mistakes and there's just no fixing it. I am walking proof that you can fix it. You know, I have made so many mistakes. I have hurt so many people. I have lied. I have stolen. I have manipulated. I was not a good person. But now, I love who I am. I am so proud of myself, and every day I walk with pride.
Good for you.
I finally was able to defeat all of those demons that held me down for so long, you know. I remember being where you're at, thinking that life wasn't for me, and now I'm here inspiring others and trying to tell them, like, it's for anybody. Anybody can get this, and I highly suggest trying to get it before the drugs take your life and your chance of doing so.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Now, if you could say something to a family member or someone that struggles with addiction, what would you say to that family member?
First, I would like to say thank you for everything that you've been going through. I already know how much I put my parents, my family, my friends through, and I am so thankful every single day that they continue to love me through it. You know, I know it's really hard to find that balance of not enabling, but also still supporting.
Yeah.
That's a difficult one, and even in my situation, you know, it took years for my parents to figure it out. You know, they enabled me for a long time because they were scared to give me that tough love, you know, but that's what I needed. If your kid is stealing from you, make them pay the consequences in some way, you know. I went in my parents' wallet every day and stole money, and half the time they acted like they didn't know I did it, you know. And I don't say anything to shame them.
Yeah.
Because it's all somebody else, and it's not helping. It's not helping to hand your kid money when they say they're hungry, because even if they're hungry, that money is going to go to a sack of heroin, you know,
Yep.
and that sack of heroin might be the one that kills them. It's just, it's a hard path to take loving an addict. And I'm not sure that it'll ever get easier, but I'm sending so much love to everyone that's doing it, and I just know in my experience, I would not be here today where I'm at now if my family had given up on me. I wouldn't. And I'm so thankful. We do recover. We do recover. Do not give up hope, because we do absolutely recover. Something I've learned through this entire process of you know, not only active addiction but recovery, there's so much power in telling our stories and speaking up. And you know, sometimes your story might, you know, you might be in recovery, you might be struggling, you might, whatever it might be, your story doesn't matter, and there is somebody out there that's listening, you know. I remember so clearly being the girl that, like, I didn't think I would make it out. And in hindsight, it's kind of funny that I had all the tools, you know, just like any other addict. Generally, not all, you know, generally does, but I had all the tools, I didn't take them, you know. But finally I have, and my life has been nothing but blessings since, you know. There is gonna be a lot of pain in the process, and I think that's something that's hard for addicts. You know, I have a lot of people in my messages on TikTok that'll, you know, talk to me about the emotions they're dealing with, or whatever it might be, grief, you know. I think this all comes down to, you have to think about it this way. There are essentially two options when it comes to the drugs, at least that I was messing with, and it's death or it's recovery, you know. The death might not come tomorrow, but it is going to come. You can't just continue gambling with your life over and over. It's like playing Russian roulette and thinking the bullet's never going to go off.
Yeah.
You know? It will. It'll absolutely go off. You know, the hurdles that life throws me now, does it still suck? Of course, because that's just part of it. But I would much rather do this without having to wake up and be like, oh my God, I'm out of heroin, now I gotta go chase down $20 for the dope man.
Yeah.
You know, that is exhausting beyond belief, and you don't have to live your life that way. Reach out. Hold yourself accountable in the moments of weakness that you feel like, hey, maybe I do need help. Go tell somebody what's going on. Go tell them you need help, you know? There are people that love you, and there are people that care, and there are millions of people in recovery that are waiting with arms wide open to welcome you, including me, you know? I talked about the power through our stories, and there was one story in particular that changed everything for me and my recovery, and that is the story of Elena. So one day I was sitting in the laundry room floor at work. I was supposed to be working, but I clearly was not. I was scrolling through Facebook, and I was hopelessly addicted at this point. I hadn't really told everyone, you know, of course, like some people knew, but it was still something that I was internalizing. And I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw a picture on like the main feed, and it was a picture of a mom. She was wearing a pink shirt, and her daughter was in a coma. You know, she had the tube down her throat, and Carol, the mom, was laying across her daughter. That daughter was in a coma, and she eventually had to pull her off life supports. I had read probably 1,000 stories at that point in my life about overdose, and not a single one of them ever resonated with me. I knew that every time I put heroin up my nose, I was gambling with my life, but I never thought about that before beforehand, you know, like after maybe, but I was already high and dismissed the thought. Then suddenly this story about a stranger and her daughter dying really hit me so hard, and I remember just being like, I don't want my dad to find me that. I don't want my dad to find me that way.
Yeah.
My dad can't find me that way, you know. And that's the day, like, that really started being in the forefront of my thoughts, you know. I went home and I told my parents that I was struggling. Sorry, it's a little hard sometimes to think about this, just, you know, all the pain I caused, but I went home and I told my parents I was struggling and I needed help, you know. And I reached out to Cheryl, Elena's mom.
Mhm.
And I remember, you know, everybody believes in something different. I believe in God. And for 2 days, I had this itch on my shoulder that was almost like this constant nagging to find this woman. You know, their story had just been so heavy on my heart for days.
Mhm.
And so finally, I listened to that little voice that was telling me to find her, and I found her, and I reached out to her, and I was able to form a really beautiful friendship with this mother who had lost her daughter, and you know, it's so hard that we keep losing people to this that have so much potential and so much life ahead of them, and I know that Elena did not want to die. You know, I know that she was like me, and she had so much potential ahead of her, but one day she got the wrong bag of drugs, and that cost her her life. You know, ultimately, that entire story is kind of what began my process to getting clean. You know, I started the Suboxone, I started the methadone. It was kind of the beginning of that path, and I won't even lie, there were multiple relapses in there. It took a long time for me to finally get it, but I will never forget the day that I read Elena's story. And I'll never forget that I told everyone in my life, you know, I pray that one day maybe I'll be brave enough to share my testimony, because to put everything out there for me has been a process, you know. My job, there's just a lot of questions that I know a lot of people had that finally I answered by being like, hey, I'm a recovering heroin addict. You know, all of a sudden, like, all of those things made sense. But I did it, and it's been the most beautiful thing of my life. I told so many people I hope that my story one day can change lives like Elena's changed mine. And then here I am having, you know, I think it's like close to 93,000 people following me on TikTok, sending me messages telling me that my video is the reason they didn't relapse, or the reason that, you know, I'm reminding them why they're doing this. Or I even have people that follow me that are in active addiction that I just chat with. You know, I'm not here to judge, I'm not here to push, like, of course I'm here to help you, but I understand that it's not that easy, and sometimes it's just giving somebody an ear to talk, you know, like to listen and just realize that sometimes we just need to hear other people's strength and hope, and it can change everything, you know. And with Elena, it's all come full circle, you know. Elena did not die in vain. I can't imagine, you know, Elena's story was all over the place. I am one person that read it out of probably millions. So how many other lives did that story change, you know? And then you go, I am just one person that's changing hundreds of lives. What about all those other people that are sharing their story and that are you know? And it's just, for things to have come around like that, it's my biggest blessing. It's my biggest success, and it keeps me fearlessly continuing to admit to the person I was, because the person I am, to be frank, is really a badass, and I love her. You know, I I cried with her. And,
Awesome.
and part of that is accepting who I used to be, but I'm not that person anymore. Anybody can change, you know. Life is forever changing. We can change with it.
Absolutely.
Like, finally, I think I've righted all my wrongs.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, and that takes a long time, and it's such a process, but it really feels good to feel secure in the fact that, like, my family and my friends nowadays, like, they don't worry about me. They don't have to worry about me, and that's a blessing. My name is Amy. I am a grateful recovering addict. My clean date is January 20th of 2020.
Whoa.
And today, I'm just really insanely grateful to be able to use my voice for good.
Awesome.